Boom! Hello, this is Simon. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight 2. How's it going? Sorry I'm a couple of minutes late. As usual, I seem to have trouble setting up actually at this time of night, so sorry about that. Hope you are all well. Very good to see you, Mr. Kuyashii, Robert, Old Dude, and the Sergeant Bilko. Good to have you along here. Hope you're all well. I am good. Yeah, no, what's up? This is an Instagram I took earlier this week of Mount Fuji. And it was actually quite nice. It was a good photo, so yes, I took that. How's your week been? Are you watching the Winter Olympics? I've been watching that tonight, and yeah, I'm finding it. You know, the Japanese skaters have done quite well, it seems. So it's been interesting to follow. Hey Quinn, good to see you. Aphex, good to see you. Dokkan, indeed. Boom, boom, boom. Good to see all of you guys. In terms of what's going on with MyChan TV, I tested a kind of a working mock-up. It doesn't have the data going through it yet. I've seen the pure database version of it, which we made to prove that the thing works as a proof of concept. So that is out there and that exists. But now we're doing the full graphic user interface that I'm planning to use. Hey Kit, good to see you. We're using the full graphic interface, and this is more of a graphic interface test. It was working, but with some dummy data. But yeah, so far so good. It looks really, really good, and we are still on track for first week of March for getting it to beta for you guys to have a go with. So I'm still really stoked and looking forward to that. Yeah, no, that's really, really good. What else? I don't really have a story specifically about all the gun debate happening at the moment. There have been so many of these things now. I mean, I'm almost surprised that it even becomes a debate. Hey, Bradley Ford, good to see you. Yeah, you know, the usual sort of rhetoric, but it's just such an non-brainer. I mean, again, you come to Japan, gun-owning household, hell, military household. I went hunting as a kid. We had rifles in the house. Yeah, it's. I still think, and for all of that, I'm very glad to live in a country where it's really, really hard to get a gun. You actually need to take a test, like a driving test, to be able to get guns here. It's, you know, it's hard. The types of guns you can get are only guns that you would use for like hunting and stuff like that, shotguns and air rifles, and you know, the society here works pretty well. Yeah, feel terrible for America, but at the same time, the problem is obvious and the solution is obvious, but Americans just don't have the will to do it because they've got a constitution that doesn't allow it. It's been frustrating. I've gotten into a few debates. I normally stay away from US politics as much as possible, but I couldn't help myself this week because it's just so stupid. And I'm not even strictly, I'm not like anti-gun. I shoot guns, you know, I have shot, I've grown up around them. But, you know, again, it's obvious to me that there is a problem, and it's obvious that there are no final solutions. The human element's always going to be there, but there are definitely things that you can do that people are trying to avoid. It's just insane. That is the mental health problem, that people don't want to fix a problem that has a really obvious fix. So yeah, that wasn't in the topics, but I thought I'd get into that tonight. And yeah, I don't know. I actually don't have a lot of topics. Remember as well, if you say my name in the comments, it will flash bright orange, which means that I will be more likely to notice it, and I'm here to talk about anything that you want me to talk about. But yeah, I've got a few things, and a few things happened this week that I would love to share with you guys, so let's get into it. Mr. Kuyashii, always taking me out of context. That's okay. Why did I add this to the topics for tonight? The music on, oh yes, okay, so this is by Tai Nakamura, who normally makes it along here. If he's not here tonight, that's okay, but he is offering to make music for anybody who wants music for their channels, and he makes very, very good he makes great music, actually. And in fact, one thing I was actually thinking tonight was, I really wish you could have like music before these live streams, because if you could, I would put in the Tokyo Digital crew members' music, you know, just let you guys listen to it. If you get in early, I mean, he makes really good stuff, and that's actually the best time to be listening. You know, I like to play around with music at the end of the live stream. There you go, Bradley Ford, see, you've got it. yeah, you know, I like to play around and show it at the end of the stream. I don't want to make it in the start of the recorded stream because people who are going to want to come and hear the topic, so you're just going to get music in the beginning. But I think, like for the waiting room music, well, let us put our own music in YouTube. I think that would be really good, and you get an idea of how good the real Tainaka is indeed. Mr. Tai Nakamura is at making really, really good music. So you should take him up on that. Interesting subject going on in Japan is the debate about allowing couples that want to have separate surnames, not mandatory, not whether you call it music, whatever, but the sort of lobby music or whatever, but being able to put it on a playlist of authorized music. I guess that's maybe the problem. People would put in, you know, copyrighted music or whatever. But if you could verify, as it always is with us, that it's actually our music or whitelisted music, then yeah, I reckon that would be a nice way to do that. So the government is considering changing the law to allow people. At the moment, if you are Japanese and you marry another Japanese, by law, the one person, not necessarily the woman, but one person needs to take the other person's name. It's part of, because of the name registry system that Japan actually has, a bit like Britain. They have like going back to the medieval period, back to the Edo Jidai, they have this they were very good at keeping records of every name, every family, mainly for taxation purposes, just like in Britain. But the result of this was a family register that goes back hundreds of years in Japan, and the whole thing about that was when you got married, you would decide which spouse would join the other person's family record. They would actually move you onto the other record. Really interesting thing about Japan is that although now it's very modern, and now I know people with like 4 surnames, you know, they just keep like adding them and adding them and adding them and stuff like that. And you get all of these sort of hyphenated surnames, these kind of, you know, addended surnames or whatever, people retaining their surnames and doing whatever. That said, majority of people I know where I grew up still go with single surnames, and it are still overwhelmingly women taking the men's surname. It's just, it's not imposed on them per se, mandatorily. In Japan it is, at least for Japanese women. If you marry a foreigner that doesn't have a family record, there is no requirement to jump on the other person's register. In fact, you by default keep separate names. But at the same time, by law, when you get married in Japan, you know what, the default might be that the woman gets moved over, but certainly you're required to choose. Interesting thing though is that was always traditionally decided based on status, which meant that if a man was marrying a woman of higher status, it was pretty common. And it's pretty common if you ask Japanese people that you know about their family histories, if they're aware of them, it's pretty common that whereas in the West typically we're patrilineal, we follow the fathers up. Japanese, it jumps back and forth between mothers and fathers based on which family was the better family, and it's not uncommon even today for men to take the woman's family name. In fact, happens, you know, sometimes deliberately, especially with single child families where where it's a daughter and they're doing quite well. Sometimes the in-laws will insist that the groom takes their family name and offer them a job at the company and all of that sort of thing. So at the moment there's been this idea that anyway it's sort of it is a huge burden for the person changing their name, you know, obviously changing all the bank accounts, all the sort of registration, you know, passports, all that sort of stuff. And a lot of people nowadays, they're living these independent lives, and there's more and more demand for why do I have to go through the inconvenience of changing my name, you know, for work, for travel, for banking? Why don't I get to keep my own family identity, even, you know, why do I have to give that up just to be married? And it's a reasonable thing. So yeah, it's really interesting. There's been sort of a movement, including one of the leaders of the opposition parties refuses to marry her lifelong partner who she has kids with because she doesn't want to change her name. And it looks like it's getting enough momentum that the Cabinet Office took a couple of public surveys, and they found that there's pretty broad general support at the moment for allowing it, in spite of conservative opposition to it. So yeah, it could be a big change, and it's another sign that the time is changing. Is that Hanafubuki? Oh, Hanafubuki-san, 見てますね。お久しぶりです。もうすごい早しぶりしてて申し訳ないけど。おー、素晴らしい、素晴らしい。Hanafubuki, everybody click on Hanafubuki's channel. If you don't know her or you haven't seen it before, go and check out her channel. She's one of the most creative Japanese YouTubers who makes awesome videos. You should go and completely check her out. Her channel. Yes. Wow, that's really cool. Oisashiburi. She actually did a voiceover once for the animated, once I got unrested to draw a cartoon for a story, a comic for a story that, in fact, wait a minute, No, I told that story. I did the audio for that. He did the comic. But with how to argue with Japanese people, she did the like introduction voice for that. That was really, really cool. Oh, it's great to see you, Hanafubuki. Jen no Manga, good to see you, Jen no Manga. You're happy to use your husband's name as your kids have his name too. Well, that's the argument I used for asking my wife to take my name. Not when we were married, but when we had my son coming, I was like, please, let's all have the same name. Effects, could I please make a pre-show stream filled with music to get ready to do a real show on a separate stream? I could do that. That's a good idea, Apex, actually. You know, I could. That's not a bad idea at all. I mean, in the end of the day, I'd probably, yeah, I could, and you know what, I could probably even well, you know, I could just play it. That's right, I could just do that and not save the video. That would be a very good idea. Yeah, Kate, definitely go check out Hanafubuki's channel. She makes very, very good videos. So yeah, all very good, and good to see some old faces and you there in the comments. Applications saw an 80% increase in applications for refugee status last year, up from 10,000 roughly to 19,628. Of those 19,628 people applying for refugee status here in Japan, only 20 people got their refugee applications accepted. Interesting thing here, apparently, like, and in fact, even there's this article, there's a few articles on this, the articles that go into more detail, the people from like the top 5 applicant countries, which often were like Nigeria, other parts of Asia, whatever, China, whatever, yeah, none of the 10 largest applicant groups by nationality, i.e. the top 10 countries from which they applied, were given applicant status. Apparently, who were the lucky 20? In fact, maybe they'll say here, in terms of the applicants, here we go, the number of applicants from Philippines shot up. The largest group by nationality, there goes Philippines, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Indonesia also increased. I guess Japan doesn't want to be, also has kind of close relations with all those countries and doesn't want to be seen, helping political opponents or whatever getting refugee status. But in the end, most of them were Syrian or people from, actual war zones at the moment. I believe there were some Myanmar refugees also accepted this year. Oh, it's good to see Hanafubuki there. Very, very good. Where will they locate all 20 of them? So bear in mind here, and this is something which the government is actually, in spite of only accepting 20 refugees, is cracking down on them. Not the 20, they're cracking down on the 19,000. The point being that when you come to Japan and you apply for refugee status, until your refugee application is processed, you do get you are allowed a temporary working visa. So there is a feeling in the government that a lot of people are coming here with the intent who would not be able to get a working permit any other way, but are coming here and abusing the refugee system in order to get temporary work permits to send remittances back to their home countries. And the government's pledged to sort of crack down on frivolous refugee applications. I think I've stated my opinions on this before. 20 out of 19,600 is ridiculous. 2, Japan is, hey Tokyo Drew, good to have you along, no problem at all, join anytime. Yeah, a lot of the world, including my grandfather, there's a lot, at any given time, there's always a lot of refugees for a lot of reasons, and a lot of legitimate reasons, and a lot of the people at the moment, I know that Europe's a bit overwhelmed with what they have. But it's not new at all. Remember, after World War II, even before World War II, there were waves and waves of refugees and migrants. And those migrants and refugees often turn out within a generation to be the most productive and contributing members of the societies that they join when they're allowed to be. I do realize that there's I definitely believe in assimilation. I believe it's important for people to assimilate, to try to fit in where they go to. They need to be given support for that. I also think it's not helpful for the society or the refugees if they are, if they can't be accepted and processed or whatever. And it's a burden that needs to be shared. And Japan has always tried to maintain international standing by supporting international organizations and trying to be a good global citizen. But frankly, it's a little bit not in my backyard when it comes to refugees. It doesn't want to, if it's a problem, it'll pay money to UNESCO to go and, declare World Heritage sites and go off in Africa and, give aid and whatever in remote locations funded by Japan, but when they actually have to put up and host them as migrants, they're not so willing. And bear in mind, Japan needs immigrants, and yes, it's always nice to be able to choose your immigrants, but at the same time, you know, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for countries accepting refugees, and a lot of people wouldn't be. You know, so I think we always lose sight. People sort of give into fear, and remember during World War II there was a lot of fear of refugees who were fleeing Europe into Britain and Australia, that they were fifth columnists or whatever. Hey, Tai Nakamura, I just did a huge promo for you at the beginning of the video. I guess you'll see it later, but I just showed you a tweet before where you offered to make people music for their video shows and so on, and yes, that's the guy there. So if you're interested in getting music made, check out the man who does it, also in big capital letters. He is very, very good at that sort of thing, and good to see you, James O'Hara. So I don't know, to me 20 out of 20,000 is just, it's actually immoral. I mean, just that number is immoral. And by the way, don't think that the other 19,000 whatever it is are all fake. No question, there are people taking advantage of the system, as there always are with any sort of immigration system. But I know lawyers who do this, and you know, I remember I did a video when I went to the Japan Society, an NPO that supports refugees here. I gave them a couple of my old suits, which I'd grown out of. They weren't worn out. They were good suits, but I just lost weight, and you know, it was good for these people. It was helping these people out. Good people in them. Lots of good lawyers, Japanese lawyers who support these organizations and look after the cases of individuals making these applications. And you know, yeah, kind of ridiculous. So Japan not doing so good on that particular one, but they are doing good on other things, which I will move on to for the next subjects. I mean, this in itself, Japan maintains tough stance on refugees. There's a number of applications, and it has gone up a lot. It is interesting that so many want to come to Japan, especially when they know how poor the chances of success are. This is kind of random, but yes, so James O'Hara, they're not fake. They're responding to the Agenda 21 plan. What is the Agenda 21 plan? Because I'm not immediately aware of what that is. I might have heard of it before, but I don't know what it is. So please elaborate. America is apparently considering putting in a low Earth orbit cannon, or basically a satellite that would. The interesting thing is when you drop something from orbit, you know, especially if you were to put in like titanium just rods that just have to be missile-shaped rods, you could actually fire them from orbit anywhere on Earth, and it would have the impact of being like a low-yield nuclear weapon, but it would just be metal. It would just be like firing a projectile, like a bullet. And apparently America is going back into the idea of weaponizing space with nuclear equivalent level destructiveness weapons. So, hey Remino, on the one hand this seems kind of cool, on the other hand you have to sort of think, when this was put up, by the way, this idea has been around for a long time in Japanese science fiction. So when this was put up, when this became news in Japan, everybody started listing off all of the anime and manga series that they thought the American government was plagiarizing with this plan. In fact, they go down in the comments. I don't actually know these actually, but Ronginis, Indora no Nani, I think that's what you call it, Yumi, Raputa no Ikazuchi, Dice Reigns Butai. Anyway, I mean, apparently there's been all of these different anime and so on which featured this weapon. Interesting that America is doing it. Interesting that Japanese already are claiming pretty much ownership of the idea. This is kind of cool. I was actually just reading this on Rocket News, and apparently there's an American designer who's very conscious of good design just generally in Japan, just sort of I guess mindfulness of people and convenience, and he started basically while he was traveling around in Japan recording all of the sort of things which are small things. Kohoshino, why am I interested in space so much? I don't understand how anyone could not be interested in space. In fact, I often think about shit. Well, lately my showers have been very, very productive in terms of thinking about stuff. And I've had a couple of really good thoughts in the shower recently. I had one just before the show, which I will share. I think I've been doing this every week. I talk about what I just thought about in the shower just now. I am a spacehead, absolutely. My head is full of space. I think that was a Beverly Hillbillies quote, which Yes. Anyway, the if we wanted to see, at the moment we know we have the Kepler space probe, we have all these space telescopes. We're going to put more space telescopes into space, and we can see further and further at the moment, and we can now detect indirectly. We can't see the planets going around stars, but we can now detect from the movements of stars. We can actually measure those stars' movements accurately enough that we can tell that there are how many planets of what size going around those stars, and based on those calculations of how many planets, what size those planets are, and how close those planets are to those stars, we can get an idea of which stars have a good chance of having planets like Earth. You know, we're getting a huge catalogue of planets now. I mean, it's amazing. When I was an astronomy geek at high school, it was unimaginable that we would have this much data on exoplanets that we have now. However, there's this thing, even as you get this list of what are the nearest stars that have planets, that have good candidate planets, and if we wanted to send space probes to them to go and figure them out, like Voyager, that could go and take photos and send us data back about them and tell us if there are aliens or whatever living on them, you know, any probe that we send, even to the nearest star, 4.2 light years away, Proxima Centauri, or Centauri if you pronounce it correctly, or Alpha Centauri, it would take probably like 100 years to get there, you know, unless we figure out some way to get close to the speed of light, you know, 4.2 years. It would take more than the lifetime of anyone making it to be able to get there, and then 4.2 years for the data that it sends to get back. So we apparently have found planets around Alpha Centauri. Apparently they exist. We don't think that it's a good candidate for life-bearing planets, but there are apparently planets there. So it is worth going and checking out. So of course, you know, me being selfish and having a short temper, I want to see the photos that we would get of the first exoplanets, right? A direct photo of the planets going around these stars. And I remember the other week, my mind was blown by getting the photo of the disk of, I think it was Arcturus, was it? It was a supergiant, anyway. We don't have to, Proxima Centauri, yes. Yes, Proxima Centauri is the nearest one. It's multiple star system anyways. But I digress. The point is that we don't need to wait 100 years to see the photo, to photograph the planets around Alpha Centauri. There is an easier way of being able to see planets and other stars. It's from a trick that you can do using gravitational lensing. This is how we see things that are super far away, which is that if you use a star or a galaxy that's so big that it can bend light, the light itself can become like a supermassive lens. That means instead of the very big telescope that you're using like a star-sized telescope lens, and this can actually give you like super magnification. And we know from looking from Earth at other stars and the stars behind those stars that we can actually we can see things very, very far away if we're very fortunate, just looking around the fringes of the edge of the star. Apparently, someone's figured out that if we can put satellites or space telescopes roughly the distance of Pluto away from the sun, we could use the sun as a lens for looking at these other stars, and with the predicted resolution that you would be able to see the stars and the planets around other stars that you were aiming this at. The problem is, of course, you've got the sun and you've got the orbit of Pluto, and you'd have to move around like this to pick your target, so you probably want to have multiple ones. But I was just sort of thinking, you know, it'd probably take, I guess, you know, with the best propulsion engines that we sort of have, it might take 5 to 10 years to put a space telescope out in the orbit of Pluto. I mean, we've got the Horizons probe at the moment that's out basically in the Kuiper Belt. It's out just beyond Pluto now. It took about 10 years to get out there. But you could put like 20 satellites out there, and you wouldn't have to travel to those stars. We could take photographs of those planets and assess which ones are the best ones to go to, and we could do that and have those photographs. It would only take like, what, 12 hours for the data to come back from Pluto, as opposed to 4.5 years from actually going to the stars. And we can actually take good, pretty decent photos of these planets and suss them out. So for me, well, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm guessing. How long did the Horizons probe take to get to Pluto? It took more for Voyager. It took 10 years. I think they found out faster ways to get out there. But yeah, to get a probe out there, to get a probe or a large space telescope out that far out, which you'd want to be able to move around to be able to, you know, align it with the sun and the stars that you wanted to aim at. But you could actually do the equivalent of, I mean, it'd be like Star Trek, except you wouldn't actually have to travel. You could actually it'd be like doing a flyby of a space probe, and you'd only have to fly 10 years instead of flying 100 years, and, you know, not actually go to the destination. So I was sort of thinking, like, well, why aren't we figured out that we could do this about, you know, like 10 years ago? Why aren't we spending all of our money on that? I mean, you know, if we knew that there was going to be life on Alpha Centauri, of course we would go and spend you know, of course we go spend money on a space probe knowing that we'll never see the results of it in our lifetime. But why do that when we can get the results of the thing now? 9.5 years, 10 years. So I'm good, right? I'm good. I just pulled that number out of my ass, but I figured it must be about accurate. And I'm sure we could probably get there even faster. But here's the point. It would take like 100 years to send a space probe to Alpha Centauri. It would take 9.5 years to send like 20 space probes to the orbit of Pluto. And you could take proper photographs of these planets. So I don't know why we don't do that. So Kuyashii, you ask, why am I such a space head? Well, holy crap, isn't that cool? That's pretty much the reason. So coming back to good design in Tokyo. I must admit, I saw this, I didn't really think about it, but there are some really nice examples here. This is a very good, I should give credit to the author of this, Dale Roll from Sora News 24, from Rocket News. Thank you for putting this together. So apparently, Prosecco Road, no, that's not the name of the person. Who was the designer? And the first day of this designer, he discovered 50 things that pleasantly surprised him about Japan. It's the Marcin Witchery. Apparently started tweeting about things that he found really interesting. The vending machine has a flap covering the banknote part. He doesn't understand why. I don't really know why either, but yeah, it's sort of discreet, so you can't see the banknotes, I guess. Again, I take this for granted, but he pointed out this is good design. When you put money into the machine, there were like lights that could basically show what you could afford based on the money that you had already put into the machine. That is true. I thought all vending machines did that, but there we go. Bought a personalized subway vending machine from a travel card from a machine. That's okay. The Tokyo subway shows an animation as you arrive at a stop with the position of your car and a diagram of the station. It feels garish, but it's actually really useful. Yeah, he kind of points out the ATM has a hook where you can hang your groceries or bags for the duration of the interaction. That's correct. You can put you imagine an old lady with a lot of bags that's trying to balance them all while they're using the ATM. Sure, in Japan they just use the hook. That's there for that purpose that they put on the ATMs. They didn't have to do it, but it is there. And yeah, when you think about it, it's kind of nice that they did that. Yeah, they put VR machine. He found people added a box where you could put things. Walking up the stairs is good for you. They've got I haven't actually seen this one before, but it's got the calories that you're burning as you walk upstairs. It's interesting that it increases as you go up as well. So he's found all of these cool things, and you know, yeah, it's nice to see someone with that perspective as well. And I guess it's another thing that's cool about Japan. So there you go. Remino asks, why did Rocket News change its name to Sora News? Sora News has always been there. I don't actually know. I think it's like a sub-site or a related site or whatever. It's like thematic or something, but it's not new. They've always been around. I don't think that Rocket News has changed its name. I think they're both there. I could be wrong about that though. Same Jen and the Muggle, right? Like I'm used to all of these, but yeah, he's actually right. It's like, yeah, come think of it, actually that is convenient. And when I go, here's the thing. So when I go back to Australia, there's things like when you go around, there's always all this sort of stuff that's very convenient and people are mindful of, but I always find, like when I'm at the convenience store in Australia and like when they're filling my bag, I want to put my money in the tray for the money, you know, and I remember getting completely messed up trying to figure out, like, you know, where is the handy tray that I put my money in, where is the, yeah, when you become accustomed to the convenience, you really miss it. When you leave Japan, you go back and you feel like, oh my god, it feels like we live in caves, you know. Are we all wolves? You know, it's sort of what you get. I couldn't actually open this article, but it's interesting. There are surveys which back up a theory that I've had for a long time that I share and I will share again, which is that Japanese society, we talk about how Japan is, you know, sexless, or people aren't getting married, or they aren't having kids, or, you know, this disaster, the demographic crisis that Japan's going through, and why is it happening? And you know, it's always been all the, well, Japan's weird, or Japan's wacky, or it's hentai, or it's they've lost their momentum for sex. So it's always sort of stupid theories like that. And my theory, which I've always said, when they talk about Japanese being less interested in marriage, less interested in kids, it's this. Even in the time that I've been in Japan, Tokyo in particular, and Japan in general, but certainly Tokyo, it's a fantastic place to be young and single and working. You can do, like, Japan has like every type of job that you can imagine in the world. Every company in the world is here. Japan does amazingly interesting, innovative sort of stuff. You get very well paid. The city is amazingly compact, which means that in spite of the fact Japan is known as being an expensive place to live, compared now, I mean, Japan's had no inflation on rent since in 20 years since I've been here. So now, like, Auckland, the rent in New Zealand is as expensive or even more expensive than it is here in Tokyo. And holy shit, the jobs that you can do here in Tokyo, the things that you can do going out here in Tokyo, is just no comparison, you know. So you can have a really, really good standard of living, provided you accept living in a small apartment to be in a handy part of town where you can always meet up with your friends and go out and do really cool things. And getting married and having kids, which I've done, you give up all of that. You know, it is, and it feels like a sacrifice to give that up. And the other thing is that when I first came to Japan in the late 90s, it still was the thing that young people would all aspire to become salarymen in stable jobs, you know, to support families, just like their parents from the bubble were. And what really happened, like in the early 2000s, is we really there was a real big shift in society where the job security, all of their dads were getting laid off early from, you know, there was a lot of restructuring that happened around that time, and young people started to see those big companies and there's big company jobs. The security, before they would accept, you know, low pay, because there would be like this long-term security, and the pay would gradually increase. So they would, you know, it was like being a made man. It was like being safe getting into a big company. But when they saw that that safety was gone, but yet they still had to go and work under these horrible superiors without job security, a lot of people said, well, screw that. And a lot of young people, actually, again, there's been a real ground shift. There's a lot of Japanese people now, young Japanese people, preferring either to just work doing part-time jobs or like contract work, or they are starting their own companies, or they're doing jobs that interest them, which again, what I see of people who have come into the workforce after me is that they are not as afraid of losing their jobs. They're not as afraid of doing something that interests them. And I think we've got a society of people now that are very, on the positive way, on the positive view, I think they're very self-fulfilled, and they have very interesting, comfortable lives, and it's why they aren't interested in going overseas to study, because that was always a fast track to getting into a good job in a bank or something. But people don't care about those jobs now. They can do interesting jobs here, and they're doing them. So on the one hand, they're self-fulfilled, they're interesting, you know, they've got these great lives, very comfortable, fulfilling lives as individual people. The downside is, I suppose you could say, it makes people kind of selfish, at least selfish in the broader societal sense, that they don't have kids. But the fact is that it's, in a way, I think Japan's demographic issues are the result of its success at creating a society that people like to be in. And I can vouch for it. I mean, Japan is a tough society in many, many ways, but once you sort of figure the ins and outs, it's actually, I think it's become easier to live in, a lot easier to live in since I first came. And I think it's not just for foreigners, it's not just become more foreigner friendly, I think it's genuinely become really, Japanese are very different. They're a lot more mellow now, and a lot more into the things that they do. And I think that the creativity that comes out of these young Japanese now that are doing their own thing, it's really fascinating. But at the same time, you have this problem, they're not having kids because they're just into their own things, they're living in their own worlds. And you do have concern what's going to happen. You know, these people are all going to end up looking after, you know, elderly people. But for now, you know, the experiment that's going on, in a way, it's almost an example for me of a society that's been too successful. You know, I mean, every society aspires to sort of create a society. Hey, Kevin Crocker, good to see you, man. I think it's good for us. Societies aspire to create societies where young people feel content. But fact is that, you know, societies with people who are kind of struggling tend to be very energetic and very productive. They tend to have lots of kids. The economic booms happen in economies where people are struggling, right? And where people are very comfortable, yeah, they kind of let things go. And Japan is definitely in that sort of a thing. And there's positives and negatives to it. Yeah, this is my theory on Japan's current demographic issues, is that they're tied to this. And I'm not saying that it's bad at all. I'm saying it's a really interesting two-sided coin, which exists to some extent, of course, in other places, but in a really extreme way here. That you have these very positive things, that you've got a really great place to live and a really great lifestyle here, and a very negative thing that yeah, why would it requires such a degree of sacrifice to actually share a life with somebody else and actually have kids that yeah, it's a real problem. Has the stream stopped? Mr. Cordy Chap, I hope it has not stopped. Let me just check the health of the stream. You're scaring me. Live dash. I've got stream health as green, dude. So no, the party has not stopped. But thank you for scaring me. So there we go. Back into it. What else we got here? Nearly 2/3 of Japan, and this is another thing. This is another thing about life in Japan. Again, the yen is going up again. They've been like printing extra money. They've been trying to generate inflation by just printing extra cash, which in Zimbabwe and Argentina, of course, led to runaway inflation. In Japan, the yen doesn't seem to have any effect, so they keep printing more and more cash, and they are also basically giving away free loans, free money to people. I've got a friend who just bought a house in Tokyo, and the interest rate is like 0.7%. It's basically just like an IOU. It's barely even a loan. That's it. So that's it. On the one hand, credit is stupidly available and cheap, and plus you can use a loan from a Japanese bank. If you're a Japanese resident and you live here and you want to get a loan for your house in Australia or America, you can get a Japanese loan to pay for that, which is a lot of people, when they figure this out, in America you have to pay like an 8%, 10% loan, mortgage or whatever. You can actually get a 1% mortgage from a Japanese bank on an American or Australian property. So a lot of people who are very smart do this sort of thing. I'm not smart, so I don't do it, which is, yes, I feel stupid, but it is there. And here we go. There's a survey that apparently 2/3 of Japanese loans carry rates below 1%, so there you go. Yes, Australia has terrible internet. That's the reason I would not use a loan in Japan to pay for a house in Australia, because I couldn't live with the internet there. It's amazing to me that how bad the internet is in Australia. Whoa, what happened there? Let's go down there. Tourist boom, yeah. So again, tourism is also doing great for Japan. So Japan's got a lot of good things going for it. The economy is doing good based on tourism. This, I want to talk about this. Let's show this. This is important documentary content. Kuyashii desu. Kuyashii desu. This is kind of like a meme at the moment in Japanese society. So, I had an interesting conversation this week at work. Basically, it was where I was working on one problem, and I thought I was doing kind of well at it, and I made a lot of progress, and I'd come up with a really good solution to it. And then I was told, hey, this other guy is also working on a problem, not your problem, but a very similar problem to yours, and he's using a different approach, so you should talk to him. So I talked to him, and we compared ideas, and I showed him my idea, and he showed me his idea, and I realized as he was explaining his idea to me, it was like, holy crap, I didn't know about that tool that he was using for it. And I was building up to use this thing which I found, which I was helping to develop up, and I realized, oh my god, your idea is better than mine. And as much as as much as I wanted to be the guy who did this particular thing first, to be like my channel, I want to do this thing, right? I want to be the one who does it. At the same time, I certainly recognize the thrill is of finding something, a problem that you want to be the one to solve it. You want to get, when no one else is doing it, you take a real pride in seeing a solution, a clear-headed solution to it, and you want to be the first to get the implementation out. It's just, for me, that's the thrill. So when I talk with someone else who's kind of thinking very similarly to me, and he figured, I realized that, oh my god, I think your solution's better than mine, and as much as I would love to take credit for mine and do mine in parallel to yours, at the same time, I also think it's also really terrible when people have like a whole bunch of different tools to deal with, for similar problems, especially if one problem can deal with the, can fix both, if one tool can fix both problems. So I had this problem. I listened to this guy, I loved what he was doing, and I loved actually how we had a fantastic conversation that it really clicked really, really well. And we had a great conversation, I was full of admiration for this guy. But I had to sort of acknowledge, and what I wanted to say was, I feel, down isn't the right word, I didn't feel down. I actually felt kind of enthused about what this guy had done, but I sort of recognized, damn, I got, I'm like the happy silver medal winner, and it's like, I really want to be the gold medal winner. It's motivating. I feel in my stomach like, damn, but you got me. So you know that feeling that you get when, you know, you don't feel down. You know, you might say gutted, but gutted is like a feeling of feeling like dejected or like down. It's not exactly like that. It's this feeling when you lose sometimes, or you come in second place. You get this kind of feeling of frustration, self-frustration in your stomach, and it can be, you know, sometimes it can be a negative feeling or it can be a positive feeling. But in the Olympics, for example, in Japan, when you get the people who are going for gold and they get like a silver or bronze, they say, you know, well, I'm happy with the result, but I can't help but feel a bit Kuyashii. I can't feel, you know, I feel Kuyashii that I couldn't get the gold, but I got a good result, and the guy who won it did a good job. And I was feeling like that. I was feeling like, you know, it's not that I feel down, I just feel this kind of frustration in my stomach, but I got to admit, your idea is great, so good job. So I wanted to say Kuyashii to this guy, because I was thinking Kuyashii, which is what that guy is saying, Kuyashii desu. You know, it's like when you lose the girl, when you know, give it your best shot and you just come just short, but you know, it's not meaning that you are necessarily depressed or gutted. It might mean that, but generally it's that thing when you lose a game and you really wanted to win and you lose and you just like, damn, I just want to. It's what makes us swear. It's that feeling that when you say fuck, or when you swear, when you're playing sports, for example, you miss a shot and you swear. It's that feeling in your stomach that makes you want to, you know, swear. And Japanese don't have swear words. I mean, they kind of do, but not really that serve the same sort of purpose. In that situation where we say just like, God damn it, Japanese would say, I feel this funny thing in my stomach of you know, the frustration. And the whole idea is that, you know, just like we have, like, you're not supposed to say swear words, you know, we have to hold it in, and it's that it's because it's a forbidden word that it feels so satisfying getting it out when we swear. And we say the F word for Japanese. They really can't get it out. There's no words to do it with. So the only thing they can say is, I feel this emotion of wanting to swear and I can't do it. Basically, that's what Kuyashii desu kind of means in a context of normally having lost. So it's like, when you look at this on ALK, what I was trying to say to this guy, I feel Kuyashii. I was on the phone to a guy in America, and I was kind of like, I wanted to say Kuyashii, and normally, even when I'm thinking in Japanese, the words do pop into my mouth in English automatically. I don't almost never get stuck, but I got stuck, and I was like, yeah, you know, I feel. You know, I think I've been in Japan too long. You know, I've lived in Japan 20 years, and there's a word that is the feeling that you get when you're like, you got the silver medal, and I can't remember the right word for it in English. I think I forgot the English word for it, this is really embarrassing, but you know, that feeling like you want to say damn it. And yeah, I was kind of stuck there for like 20-30 seconds, and he kind of got it, and I was kind of like, yeah, I'm sorry. And then my mind was just screwed after that call. I put it down. I was like, what does that? And it's kind of funny. I felt Kuyashii and not knowing the word Kuyashii in English. It just occurred to me I couldn't like express the word that was in my head. I could explain it, but I couldn't express it. And you know, I went online to look at alc.co.jp. That's the best dictionary that I know, because it's got lots of examples. And there was like mortified or dejected or grudging, but they were kind of down. It wasn't like that. It's like, you know, God. It's like, God damn it. There was also frustrated, but it wasn't frustrated either. I wasn't frustrated. I mean, that was part of the emotion, but it's just that feeling like I gave it my best shot and it wasn't good enough. But you know, whatever. And so I actually started asking around, because you know, I was like, dude, I think I'm losing my mind. What's the word? How do you say? Well, but deflated is like a negative connotation, whereas, you know, it's actually the opposite to being deflated. You feel inflated with frustration. That's what makes you swear. You do swear, I mean, when you are frustrated like that. So I started asking people around, and we all sort of generally agreed that there wasn't really a good word for what I wanted to say. Because whenever we say gutted or dejected or mortified or whatever, it's got this kind of like losing energy kind of nuance to it in English, which is different. Righteous indignation, not exactly righteous indignation. I mean, it's similar. In fact, it's definitely a similar feeling to what I'm trying to describe. It's a negative but energizing emotion. Hungry. Well, hungry is kind of before, though. You know, when you're hungry for something and you don't get there, it's that thing. But rather than feeling down, you're kind of like. So it's good to say Kuyashii in Japanese, because people will take that as, oh, now you're energized to try again. Which, when you say you're gutted or dejected, it doesn't sound like you're ready to go out there and win it next time. So it's a really, really good word, and that's what this guy is saying in that video. And regrettable and vexing. Yeah. Vexing to me, I always take as being confused though, and regrettable is kind of like, again, it's got this kind of downward thing. So I don't know. It was really interesting to me to hit that word, which I couldn't express, which was really unusual for me. Kevin Crocker's actually, that's the best. That's the best one. That's exactly. But this is the point. So I think what happens is in English, when we feel Kuyashii, we don't say that I feel Kuyashii. We just swear in that situation. It's like, God damn it, good job, you got me, God damn it. That's what you say in English. In Japanese, you say, I really feel the feeling of saying God damn it, but we don't have the word God damn it in our language, so we just say I feel the feeling of Kuyashii. And we just hold it there. And this is this funny thing, because when I had Japanese friends in New Zealand who were like living in New Zealand for a long time, they would say to me, they love the word fuck. They love the word shit, because in Japanese, while they could express what the emotion is, they could never had a good word for getting rid of the emotion. This is the thing. In Japanese, you don't have these words to get out. You can say chikisho or kuso. Kuso sounds like it. Kuso is literally shit, but kids shows in Japan, when I came to Japan, they were like kids puppet shows were saying shit. It's not like a taboo word, so you don't get the satisfaction that you do from swearing. And Japanese would say to me themselves, they love swearing when they come into English, because it gives them this outlet for venting this sort of frustration and stress that Japanese doesn't have. And this is exactly it. Japanese will say, oh, I have this feeling of pent-up frustration and stress and frustration and anger at having lost. Good job. Whereas, we just say, fuck. And they don't have that word. So it's kind of funny. Kuyashii and swearing, I think, is a really interesting gap between the languages that I became aware of for the first time, really, in 20 years here the other day. So I thought that was funny. Yes, the yen is getting expensive. It was like 115 a year ago, and now it's like 105, which means, unfortunately, if you're coming to Japan or buying Japanese stuff, it's getting more expensive. But don't worry, they're going to print more yen. They're just going to print more cash to try to make it cheaper. I did this the other day. There's this really cool tool, which is like this whole thing of all the criteria for all the cities where the HQ tour is going to go for Amazon. And when I put in all of the things that I thought were important, it came out with, apparently, for the sort of city that I'd want to work in, I put what I thought would be cool to work in, and it came out Denver, #1. 2 was Austin, Texas. I've met like 3 or 4 people from Austin, and they were all really, really cool, actually. So I got a good vibe about Austin, so I was happy about that. And 3 was Los Angeles, which was interesting. I don't know that that'd be a good place for Amazon to put its HQ to, but I love Southern California people that I've met. So yeah, but Denver, apparently, that's where I should work. I thought this was a really cool tool, so you should go check that out. Oh yes, and this is actually going to be the last one. Oh no, there's 2 more. Okay, I watched this documentary on Netflix, and you know what? I've had this on my to-watch, like my list, for like, 6 months, and I'm just like, I don't really feel like it. Don't really feel like it. I finally went and watched the Offical documentary, which is the basically a documentary of the story of that AI program, which was able to beat basically the world champion of Go, and learning in a very short period of time. That made a lot of news at that particular time. And it's a documentary which traced when they first beat the European champion in a test game, and then they went and beat the world champion 4-1 in a 5-game series. And you know what? I thought it'd be kind of a Google AI computer programmer, playing a game I don't understand. Go. The documentary explains Go very well, and it actually explains the AI very well. And if you really want to understand AI, apparently this program, and they kind of do explain it, it's actually very, very simple. It's just based on 3 elements of analysis that it does. It's based on learning a whole bunch of games and the normal games that people do, and just memorizing all the patterns that people do in these typical games. The second stage is thinking about win probability based on moves that are available at a given time. The problem being with Go that there are so many games, there's almost infinite combinations of moves that are possible, which is why computers can't really handle it. But they figured out kind of an intelligent way of calculating risk, and there was a third factor there. But anyways, it's basically it's an algorithm. It's not like in the movies, like a talking robot with red eyes. It's just a program that's figured out how to analyze. Hey, Kevin Crocker, I have well, yes, that's maybe the translation, but yes, I'm going to let that stand there just for the translation purposes. Coming back to AlphaGo. So it's a relatively simple program, and they explain this, and they explain how it works is also very, very simple, relatively speaking. It is getting smarter all the time, it learns all the time, and but what was really interesting was when it talked you through these games, I didn't expect to find it that interesting. Maybe that's why I found it interesting. It surprised me. It's actually, I found this documentary quite moving. It's weird, but they were watching the struggle of the world gold champion, like when he realizes what he's sort of up against, and realizing how, particularly, was it game 2, where the algorithm, where the AI won and kind of shocked everybody. It was particularly move 37 in game 2 and move 78 in game 4, where the human kind of came back and basically did to the AI what the AI did to him in game 2. And the whole, it just explains very, very well what's going on with the games and what happened, and just sort of what they illustrated about the potential of a very realistic way. These are not like human type machines that are going to come in and take over all the human jobs. These are tools that are going to revolutionize. They're going to show us things in things that we do that we never thought of before. They're going to find ways to do things better that are going to be helpful for us, but they're going to eventually, this is the point, we're on this precipice where they are going to become smarter and more creative and more interesting, and they've got no agenda behind that. They've got no idea of trying to replace us or anything like that. But we're going to have to kind of deal with the things that we take for granted as taking pride in as humans. These algorithms are going to challenge us. First, they're going to show us up. And then we're gonna realize, as is the case here, that we have to reevaluate, one, our humanness and exactly where our value is from, and two, we can learn and actually push ourselves further, based on, frankly, what these AI programs will be able to teach us. They'll show us things. It's like having a genius as a teacher who can show different angles to things. I mean, kind of really, really deep, actually, really fascinating, and again, another theme that I talk about a lot. I'm not sure I should be showing this, but there we go. In terms of what we're in for in the very near future, in fact, I mean, Offical shows it's already here. Dealing every walk of life, dealing with different AIs. Yeah, well, that's right. When they reach the singularity, who knows what that will be like, but. But the point is, I think it shows in a very, very realistic way. Dude, I'm I'm not going to go and click show on every single comment. You can read it anyway. So I just thought it's just a really good documentary, and it's actually strangely moving. It's pretty good. Final one, I think this is the. Oh no, there's two more. Well, first one is Hanyu. He did very well. I didn't actually realize this, but his name Hanyu, which by the way, he's got a really weird last name. It's like Wing and Raw or Life. I don't know. I thought is that like a Chinese name or something? It's not a name that I associate. Neither of those characters and characters that I associate with Japanese surnames very often. And sometimes you get that. You get people who were either like former gangsters who just made up a name, or immigrants with names that you don't see in Japan, like Fighting Dragon or whatever. Sometimes you see like in the crime news people with names like that. Unfortunately, you don't really know where they came from. However, Japan has two really famous people who have the same surname. And you know what? I've just realized. I think one is called Habu, who is a really famous world champion of shogi, and the other is Hanyu, who is the gold medal winning Japanese skater. And the guy on the right, he's been like the top shogi, which is Japanese chess. He's been like the top shogi player in the world for since before I came to Japan, so probably going on 30 years now. He's just beaten recently for the first time by a new middle school prodigy. It's been huge news. So he's in the news for losing, while Hanyu is in the news for winning. But they both have the same characters, and when you write it down, it gets very confusing. Which also, there we go. The names are very confusing. So apparently, the way that they distinguish is that apparently for the shogi master they call him Son, and for Hanyu, the skater who's younger, they call him Kun, which is like a form that you use for identifying a boy. So yeah. And can they help with unconscious bias, Bradley Ford? Well, apparently That's a good segue to the final topic. I've been in a few debates on Facebook about James Damore. I'll state my opinion, which is a little bit flippant and simplistic, but I think Google was right. The guy seems like a bit of a tool. If you've read his, both seen his interviews, which I've seen, I saw his video with Molyneux, whatever, that Canadian right-wing guy. Actually, he makes interesting videos, and he did an interesting video. I wanted to see the guy sort of explain his logic out, and he has a logic to explain, and it's there in his memo as well. I've worked in a number of big companies that have similar diversity policies to Google, and I've been in the position to hire and supervise people. Maybe no one is quite as young and stupid as this guy Damore, but you know, but certainly applying these policies in action. And genuinely, I've developed an appreciation for the need, particularly in IT. It's recognized as a you know, as an inhibitor of growth of the business, particularly at the scale that businesses like Google are at. By being insufficiently diverse, it means lost opportunity. It means disconnection with markets that they're trying to go into, and so they're very aggressively trying to promote and foster diversity in the workplace. And this person put out a, you know, tried to draft it like an academic paper, and he posted it on an internal you know, chat board or whatever, which apparently was encouraged for people to talk about work, which maybe was, Google should have thought that one through before they offered that. But he put in this idea basically about, well, yeah, I mean, so from all of you, I definitely don't agree with his views, with his conclusions, but I do always appreciate someone, even if I disagree with them, if they can at least express their ideas clearly, which I think he can do. So I'm not like, you know, he's outright the enemy and don't listen. I'll watch one of his videos, and I watched the video to watch the interview with James Damore. But yeah, I'm definitely not on the same team as him in this case as well. So he basically put this memo, which had a lot of cherry picked, but it was, you know, for the purpose of forming an argument, saying that basically maybe, you know, diversity itself is a form of imposed political correctness against conservative white men. You know, and maybe Google is suppressing their freedom of speech, and maybe that rather than trying to impose cultural correctness and social engineering through hiring diversity, specifically objecting to subconscious bias training. Subconscious bias training, which Bradford just mentioned, I think as well, is this thing of being, it's training to make you aware of the biases that you have. And it's kind of funny, when you talk about subconscious bias, you're not talking about white people being subconsciously racist necessarily. You're also talking about when they do these demonstrations, for example, even when you have minority people looking at resumes, for example, where they see other minorities, or you know, their experiments that they're showing with children as well, from a very young age, just through the media, kids, even from minorities, will tend, for whatever reason, because media is dominated with you know, authority figures that look a bit like me, that look white and blue-eyed or whatever, and they have positive associations with those people that they associate with being the stars of movies or the newsreaders or whatever, and negative associations with people that sometimes will be even their own families, you know. So it's not just a white towards minority things, it's minorities against themselves, and it creates biases when they look at information, which, being unaware of those biases, means that those biases will be able to influence without being detected. So the idea is making people aware, and it gives people tests that they can do to try to point out, hey, be careful, because you've got a tendency to, you know, want to hire people that are like yourself. And the point is, it's not to say don't hire people like yourself. The point is, it's making yourself aware so that you can check yourself and make sure that you're giving everyone a level playing field when you're assessing them. Which, on top of the fact that absolutely, you know, trying to increase hiring of women and minorities is something that they're trying to do. But anyway, when he challenged this as a form of political suppression, and as an you know, basically as persecution of white conservatives, and was fired, he took them to the labor board in California, which I thought was going to be an interesting lawsuit, but yeah, they tossed it out and he lost. So a lot of people who I know are feeling a bit like the white male is under attack at the moment. There's a lot of people like this on my Facebook and whatever, and I get in the debate with them. I think we've had a pretty good run, and I think we're still doing just fine. And I don't think we need to feel threatened by companies having subconscious bias training or improving diversity in media or in anything else. In fact, I think it's a positive and overdue thing. And I'm not just saying that to be politically correct. It's actually got an economic back into it as well. They're not doing, Google's not it doesn't have a diversity hiring program in order to appear politically more correct, or for people to like it. They're doing it because it makes them more money. I mean, that's at the end of the day, they're working for their shareholders. And yeah, it's interesting. James Damore, he challenged. He was a young, intelligent person who challenged, and he made a pretty good attempt at making an argument. But you look at it again, you look at the memo, and there's a few things in there I really didn't like. One thing in particular, I think he cited things like IQ studies. I've had a lot of alt-right-ish people. IQ studies are often linked to the idea of when you have racially aligned IQ outcomes as being self-justifying for racial discrimination. That's a really slippery and horrible slope that you should never go near. And I noticed one of his footnotes involved referencing studies like that, talking about how women are just, some women are smart, but most are just on average more disabled than men or something. It's just stupid stuff. It is worth reading the memo. It is worth reading, finding out what he's about and understanding the debate, and hearing both sides. But I did that, and I thought that Google made the right call, and it looks like the Labor Board of California agreed with me. So I thought that was just interesting as someone who works in this sort of field and had a few debates about it. Anyway, that's the end of the show. That's all my topics. Hope you enjoyed it. It's exactly 1 hour since I started. I actually tried recording a track just before this started, and it came out really well, but there was some bug when I tried to export it. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to try to record that track again right now, and that'll be my outro for the show. Yes, let's do that. Let's switch over into the iPad. Boom, 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 boom. So let me plug in and set up. Hope you guys all have a good week, and are all well wherever you are in the world. Kid, really enjoyed the chat the other week. I'm very much on an AI bent at the moment, but because as we talked about, it's actually really sort of close. I really found some of the I think some of the implications of the way that one thing I mentioned is I've become really aware lately, especially working really close to these sorts of worlds where AI is, being rolled out, that I think the science fiction writers in the 60s and 70s that started predicting this stuff and the consequences of it were amazingly prescient, actually. It's kind of shocking to me now to watch and read science fiction from 30 years ago and realize they really actually were thinking quite straight about these things. So, boom, 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 boom. I set up my things and I recorded this, and it came out really well, and then it came out as an export error, so I'm just going to do that again right now. And let's do this. I've got the record button. I'm going to hit that, and you guys are going to let me make sure that you can hear. That's there. Let's get the volume right. Let's do the outro. So this one called Coastal Racer. It's a bit drum and bassy, it's a bit video gamey, but I hope you enjoy it. And end of the show, so let's do that. Indeed, lots of lasers. You can never have too many lasers. Boom, let's do this. I never used a Mac. Oh. Sorry, my wires aren't plugged in right, but it's recording good, so sorry about that. Fucked it up. No. Sorry, it's my wires. Perfect recording. Oh. I just realized. I just realized that I screwed this up, so I'll record it again later, but anyway, let's just keep going through. End of the show. Okay, so I messed up the recording and I messed up connecting so that you could see it. The sound was cut out, but it was actually quite good. I'm going to record it. I'm going to put it on SoundCloud. It'll be out soon. Hope you all have a good week. And thank you for hanging around and talking about Japan and all the other stuff that I like. See you next week. And look out for 2.5 Kuyashiis. We are going to get Star Wolf on next week, so look out for that. And it should be awesome. And have a good weekend. Peace. Boom. Fade out by pressing the iPad button. Fading out. There we go. Boom, 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 boom. Have a good week, everyone. That track will be out soon, and it'll be a lot more organized. But yes, that was actually quite good, even though you couldn't hear it a lot of the time because it was cutting out. Hanafubuki-san, bye-bye. Good to see you all. Peace. Where do I stop this thing? There.